Let's talk more about what's at stake in those latest trade talks. Joining us right now, Joe, what?
No, nothing.
Go.
Daniel Rosen, Rhodium Group founding partner, and Nicole Lamb-Hale, former Assistant Secretary of Commerce. She's now Managing Director at Kroll and Duff Phelps Institute fellow. Nicole, do you have friends still back there? I mean, do you know any? Do you know anything we don't know about what's actually going on behind the scenes with the talks right now? Can you tell us?
Well, I wish I could. I wish I could give you some certainty there. I mean, there's a lot at stake this week. Our clients at Kroll and Duff Phelps are looking at this very closely because, quite frankly, both sides are suffering now. We're seeing a slowdown in the U.S. in terms of manufacturing activity, so it's extended beyond agriculture. In China, as supply chains begin to shift to third countries, they're beginning to feel some pain. So, you know, there's a lot at stake here.
Is it, for lack of a better term, we're looking for a skinny deal now, something that sort of, at best, I guess, moves it to a year or two from now where we don't solve all the IP and all the really contentious issues, but we get something on paper, we delay any additional tariffs, and we get some ag buys. Is there hope for that, Nicole, in your view?
I think a skinny deal is probably hopeful. It disappoints me, though, because at the end of the day, the structural changes in terms of IP protection and making sure that subsidies are not given to state-owned enterprises to level the playing field. I mean, those are the big-ticket items, and a skinny deal just kicks these issues down the road. And I have to tell you, I'm very encouraged, one ray of hope. Kroll recently issued its global fraud and risk report, where we found that 94% of Chinese executives that were surveyed with Chinese companies believe that IP protection is something that's critical. And so that gives me some hope that maybe the Chinese government will accelerate its efforts to improve IP protection, which is a structural issue that we need to really focus on.
Dan, I don't know if you're going to make us feel any better about a fat deal. It's going to be, is it a skinny deal? It's the best we can hope for?
It's metaphor day here, I see.
Skinny bundles.
And that's fine. We've been using small deal metaphors like that all year as well, since last December, actually, that the best at 90 day, remember, was going to all happen in 90 days. Mm-hmm. That was impossible. It was ridiculous. The best you could hope for was a responsible small deal. It's time to be honest now. We're talking about fake deal or lipstick on a pig deal. Because we're talking about little concessions right now that would get us halfway back to where we would have been had we not started this whole thing. That's not to say that we shouldn't be contesting, challenging where China's going, what's happening in its system. Take the NBA situation, for example. You know, to go ahead and get ahead of the question you're going to ask anyway, you can't ask a CEO to be both the public affairs officer and the chief executive looking after the balance sheet of a company. That's serving two masters, and it just doesn't work. So there's huge costs to where this whole thing is going. We've been pretending that
Business Roundtable thinks it works.
Well, you know, they're doing what they have to do in the moment, and I get that. But let's, you know, I have the opportunity, the luxury of kind of calling it a little truer. This doesn't work. This is not going in a good place. There's no happy outcome.
We already. Well, that's depressing. So, Nicole, it sounds like you were in the Obama administration, and what I usually hear from Democrats, they sort of want to take on China, but they want to do it with our allies, and they don't want to do it through tariffs. Are you in favor of the tack that's been used so far to try to bring China to the table, or should we have done it some other way? It sounds like you think IP is a problem, and some of the other the way they subsidize their state-owned or their state industries, those are all problems, right? You would have done this?
Well, I have to tell you, the critical mistake that was made by the Trump administration was pulling out of TPP. Tariffs don't work. Economists have said that for years. Now we're in a case study. We're living in a case study of how tariffs don't work. I think that being involved in a multilateral effort like TPP that would bring our allies together and really force China's hand would have been the way to go.
Yeah, Hillary wasn't going to do it either, and neither was and the President Obama tried to do it and didn't have the Democrats. He had more Republicans on the side for TPP than Democrats. So I know that what you're saying, that Trump ended it, but that didn't have a chance anywhere.
Well, I think it could have, and I think that it's something that we should begin to look at again. That's a longer-term play at this point. And I also have to say that I think that we need to be more culturally sensitive as well in our negotiations. It's very disappointing that The vice premier may be leaving early. Some of the negotiation tactics, I think we need to be careful about because there is a cultural
But Nicole,
sensitivity.
when you say the tactics, are you suggesting that we placate the Chinese?
No, I'm not at all. What I'm suggesting is that certainly announcing efforts that really box China in before we even come to the table again aren't the right way to go. And that's what happened today.
Real quick before we go, how do you think that U.S. companies should deal with China? I mean, and clearly the NBA is a clear example of where this all meets in the middle.
Sure. I think that U.S. companies should remain true to their values. I think that it's not a winning game to compromise your values.
You mean money takes precedence over everything, Nicole? That's basically
well,
what...
I wouldn't say that money's a value.
Well, that's the bottom line. I mean, that's what we're seeing with you know, we blame the NBA, but then we went back and said, you know, find a corporation that hasn't sort of appeased China because of $1.4 billion.
Well, I think that these are tricky issues, and you can't you can't solve them by tweet. You really need to sit down and have discussions and try to come to a conclusion.
I don't know. I think this is bipartisan.
But I also think these are the type of things that government should be sitting down and discussing and not leaving it up to the corporations to have to decide on a case-by-case basis.
That's 100%
You can't go up
right.
against a state.
That's
This is what
100%
exactly they should be discussing these.
Yeah, I mean, important point, right? Is this a U.S. to China negotiation, or is this multiple U.S.s and multiple Chinas? The big things that happened this week, putting these companies on the entities list, choosing to make human rights part of the conversation, that didn't even come out of the Oval Office. That came out of somewhere else.